Hi, everybody. It's Jerry,
And Mark,
and we are the
the
Military
Military
Collectibles
Collectible
Shop.
Shop.
You think we'd be good at that by now? Today, we're actually in the studio, and we're going to be doing a meeting with one of our friends from Down Under, Mike from the Militaria Review, who's actually way more famous than we are. So we're honored that he wanted to talk to us. So we will be recording our Zoom session. So we're going to talk to him kind of about the state of the hobby and what's going on and about us. And yeah, so we'll see what happens. So thanks for being along for the ride.
All right.
Guys, welcome back. I'm very, very lucky to have with me Mark and Jerry from the Military Collectible Shop. You guys will know you all enjoy their videos, their satire. They're very, very lovely guys, and I want to thank them for coming on. So, Mark, Jerry, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, guys. So to start off, I want to ask a question. Like who are the Military Collectibles Shop? Who are Mark and Jerry? Like let's talk about the business and how it sort of got off the ground and where we are today.
Well, we're both longtime collectors. We start collecting as kids, and we had a friend who had a military shop, and he went out of business, and we didn't have any place to go, so we had to start our own shop.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it started as a lark. Actually, I was on vacation in Europe, and I was in Switzerland, and there was a little military store, a little cinder block building, and they had a Panzerfaust hanging in the window, and I'm like, what is going on here? And I stopped the car, but he was only open on Wednesdays. And of course, it was a Thursday, so I didn't actually get in to see the stuff.
How very European, you know.
Yeah, well, it kind of stuck with me that, well, he could be open one day a week. And after about 6 months of not having a place to go or to talk about, and there's a few shows around the area, but the shop was kind of a weekly thing. It was a gathering place for, kind of like-minded collectors. And so a little store became available. It used to be a VCR repair store by where I live. And we thought, okay, let's try it for a year. Let's see what happens. Let's do it for a year. And if it works, it works. If not, okay, what are we out? And that was back in 2001. So
well, I was going to say, so things are working quite well. It hasn't been a sort of yearly experiment where we're 20 years into it now, so things have gone very well.
Yeah, it's moved up. I mean, because in about 2015, we took over the other half of the store that we were in. And then by about 2019, actually about 2018, we were starting to get choked out of the place that we were at. Because we had bought so much stuff. We have so much inventory, but we couldn't get to it. Everything was on pallets in the basement in bins, just stacked floor to ceiling. The fire inspector guy would come by and I'd like lock all the doors so he wouldn't see any of this stuff. But so the opportunity came up for us to get into a new location just about 6 blocks or just about a mile, maybe half mile. About a half mile. You can actually see the new shop from the old shop. And now we're at 5,000 square feet.
Okay,
so we've got a lot of room.
That's very big.
Yeah, it's big. It works. We got a front area for our retail space. We've got a warehouse area for our storage stuff and our show supplies. We've got some offices. We've got our own reference library area. So yeah,
I think that's very good. You say, you've got something that other shops don't have. You've got a reference library that, you and people can use if they come into your store. I think that's quite smart because, everything's not on the internet. A lot of younger people are still stuck in that mantra that everything is on the internet.
And honestly, even some older people, it's really interesting to see how much, because a lot of the obscure details are still hidden in the books.
Exactly. So a question I have, did you guys have, when you were starting out, did you have the area you focused on? Were you a Civil War collector, Jerry, or were you a World War II collector, Mark? Did you have an area where you kind of, like I grew up and I got into World War II because when we were growing up, we had the sort of, I assume there were lead soldiers still at that time. So God help me in a couple of years health-wise, but we had lead soldiers that we played with. I had all the things from World War II from my grandparents. So was there something that pulled you into a certain area?
For me, it was, I remember distinctly, I was about 9 years old and I was building a plastic model kit. And on the side, they had a thing where you could send in for some Army Air Force patches. It was an airplane, the P-51, I think it was. It hit me that I'm like, I've seen these patches before. And I ran up in the attic, climbed in, and I found this whole box of World War II US divisional patches that my grandfather had collected. And I was just like blown away because all the different colors and the numbers and the shapes and the symbols. And then there were a few German pieces in there too, so I was definitely intrigued by those as well. So mainly World War II, again, for a lot of the same reasons. Those were the movies that we had grown up watching. Those were the kind of people we, kind of looked up to, Rat Patrol and Combat and, all those kind of things. And Mark actually started really young too.
Yeah, my father was in the National Guard, and so a lot of the toys I got were military toys. I remember this big cannon. I remember cap gun Lugers and German helmets and stuff. And along the line, he had collected some stuff from World War II, and I found it fascinating. And as a small, younger kid, I started to collect stuff whenever we'd go out to like a flea market or so, and it just
blossomed from there, sort of. I think it's funny because if you say, like the kids these days almost don't have that sort of entry point. They have to sort of do it on their own sort of initiative, because I think it's quite rare for parents to say, like, look, here's your grandfather's helmet and here's a cap gun. The children of today are much more, here's an iPad, here's some book on world politics when they're like 7, things like that.
However, some of these kids that play these video games will come into the shop and they'll be telling their parents what different things in the shop are.
That is an interesting point.
About weapons and stuff, and these are the pouches for the MP40, and these are K98 pouches. Over here, these would be M1 Garand pouches, and I was like, wow, that's pretty intense for.
That's pretty accurate.
Yeah,
for
actually more knowledge than I had, back then.
No, 100%. Okay, guys, we've talked about young people coming in. Let's talk about how do you see the current state of the hobby, sort of the health of the hobby. It is a hobby that has an older generation as the main sort of people in it. There's a financial threshold that keeps a lot of younger people at bay. Like how do you see? Does this cause problems? How do you guys see it?
It depends if they want to start with high end.
Exactly.
Stuff, of course, that's pretty much impossible. But there's a lot of things to start off with. I mean, we've had a lot of wars here, so we have a lot of patches and field gear and uniforms and stuff. And they'll start with that stuff. And once you got a collection built up, then maybe you'll get jobs and.
Yeah, it's always kind of interesting because one of the things that I have seen, just kind of talking about some of the kids who are getting into collecting, is some of them do want to like skip from entry collecting to buying a Knight's Cross.
Yes.
And it's like I've been collecting. Oh God, I knew how many lots and lots of years. I've only bought one Knight's Cross and it was fake. I just haven't had the opportunity.
Yep.
To find one, none of them came in from the wild, and kids want to get there. They it's like,
want to jump.
Here's the Eastern Front medal. This is really cool. Look it's got a grenade on it, and it's got a helmet, and it's the Eastern Front. And you try to explain to them how cool some of this stuff actually is,
and they just instantly say, like, I need a double decal chicken wire parachutist helmet for my second item. It would look really cool in my bedroom. Things like, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, they don't just want a U.S. helmet. They want a medic helmet, and it's okay. Whatever. But I think there are a lot of entry price points in the hobby, and we try to share that with people. Like I've got one lady who collects military buttons, and buttons can be had for $0.25 or 50 cents a piece, and there's thousands of them. Other guys collect patches. Some guys collect the more modern ones, which are $3 to $5. Some of the World War II ones, most of them can still be had for around $5. And then some of the rarer ones or the more desirables, like the 101st Airbornes and things like that, go up a little more. But you don't have to get into the variants and the expensive ones, the handmade ones. So there are a lot of different price points. And what we try to do is try to find what the kids are interested in and kind of target something, like that they can afford, but yet it's still a cool representation. I always try to push, it's better to have a real item that's maybe lesser quality than a fake item that's mint.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I still think it's very good in the States. In other parts of the world, I've found that American military, especially World War II stuff, can be quite expensive. And for some reason, you guys have got the most to it. It is the home of it. But I still think it's very good that you can go and get an Ike jacket, a real Ike jacket. It doesn't have to be an Audie Murphy. It doesn't have to be 101st Airborne. You can go and get one for $50 in some place,
Right.
and that is the quintessential GI stormed through Europe or went through North Africa, and it's great. You don't have to buy the super expensive items. I have seen a lot of younger kids when we talk about trying to help them buy more entry items that you said, Mark. I've seen a lot more. Younger kids get a lot very interested in places like Vietnam, East German military, Soviet stuff, like sort of that's a newer area. So like 60s, 70s, 80s, so like a newer era of collecting. So, maybe, that's an area that hasn't had a lot of popularity before, the big ones being World War I and World War II. So maybe would you guys say that newer people, younger people coming into the hobby sort of open up other areas of collecting that might not have been as popular in the past?
Oh yeah. And definitely you mentioned Vietnam, and that if one area is experiencing an explosion of growth, it's the Vietnam collectors and reenactors. A lot of the guys who were, they're kind of getting disenfranchised with doing the World War II reenacting. So they're looking at some other possible experiences, and the Vietnam thing is more interesting to them, and it has a little more tie-in, and it's a little more affordable I think, as well. You can be 101st Vietnam reenactor, a lot cheaper than you could be 101st World War II.
That's it. Okay, I'm going to give a scenario. Okay, you have, and this is we're going to talk about probably a big issue for you guys, and that's fakes in the hobby. The rise of fakes. They're becoming more sort of substantial every day. So, you have someone, they might be in their 50s or 60s. They walk into the shop, right, and say, "I've had this for 20 years. I want X amount of dollars. It must be real." And you're sort of standing there looking down at it, and you can tell it's not real. Is that something, a problem you guys face? Like, fakes coming into the shop that have been around forever and a day. So I'd be very interested to hear your experience with how you guys deal with fakes, especially older ones.
Well, first of all, my grandfather was in World War II, and he brought this stuff back. And then I can pick out, this Knight's Cross to the War Merit Cross, this is fake. And they'll say, that's impossible. My grandfather was in World War II. When did he die?
Yeah.
Like a year ago?
Yeah, 2011,
And all that time, he couldn't have picked this up from somebody?
Yeah, and the other thing that we run into quite a lot lately is both collections, either estate collections or the collector's still living and they just want to move into something else, but sell their entire collection. And we're actually going through this now where like one of the collections we're looking at, probably about 30% of the stuff is reproduction. And when we're buying an estate collection, from the family, and now, like in some cases, the one guy even left all the price tags of everything he bought with the prices on them. And it was like, it puts us in kind of an awkward spot because we don't want to tell them something's fake and buy it and make it seem like we're lying to them.
That's a very good point.
So in most cases, we'll be like, okay, we'll separate the stuff and we'll say, okay, look, this stuff is all reproduction. If you want to sell it, we can give you this for it. But because we do sell reproductions to the reenactors, and there's
a market for it. But
it's obviously a lot less of a of a market than the original thing. So it gets touchy sometimes, and we've lost out on deals because people had thought, we
You're
were
trying
lying
to
to them
swindle them
because,
and things like that.
yeah, because, oh no, this stuff has to be, and it's like,
I think it is very hard, and what you touched on before, there were certainly a lot of World War II guys, a lot of veterans who did enjoy, just like all of us do here, did enjoy
sure,
going to gun shows and buying Militaria throughout their life. And of course, in that 70s, 80s period when a lot of bad stuff turned up, especially stuff that looks quite old today,
exactly. Things will
people
have
do
moth
struggle.
damage.
Yeah, people do struggle to accept that something that their grandparents bought is rubbish. I guess it's quite annoying. What about younger people coming in thinking they've gone on Craigslist or they've gone on Facebook
Yeah.
Marketplace and got a great deal, and then they've come in? Is this something that's happened as well? They say, like, guys, I'm here to make a couple of grand in cash.
I always tell them,
I'll give you a quarter.
you have to ask what their if it's fake, their return policy. Whoever you're buying the stuff, what is your return policy? And honestly, I've been at the SOS show, and I've seen things that I thought were probably good, but then when I ask what the return policy is, they give me some dance, and there's like, no, if you're not going to stand behind the piece you're selling me, I'm not going to buy it. I'm going to buy it from somebody that's willing to stand behind it.
Yeah.
The SOS is a very interesting one with return policy, that some people will give you one. Other people will just say, I don't take returns. As soon as you buy it, that's yours. You can die in a hill with it. Other people will say, you can contact me anytime until I die and I'll give it back. I had an example. I bought something many years ago, and I flew back home, and I found out it was fake. And I sent this guy an email, and then about a month later, he got back to me and he just said, yeah, send it back. I'll put a check in the mail. I know that's great. But I've had other stories with people saying, they've actually gone up to the booth on the day they bought it, and the guy said, sorry, partner, you handed over the cash, that ain't coming back.
Right.
And the society doesn't help with that anymore, which I find quite disappointing with the SOS.
Yeah, no, it's society in general. And it's more of a hands-off kind of thing. I'm not going to get involved.
That's it.
And it's interesting because some shows had tried to do, like, I think the Mac show, before they sold it to the OMVS, I think they had a policy in place where you had to guarantee it at least for the duration of the show.
Yes, I remember that.
Which is something.
Well, I think that's sound, yeah.
And because we've had friends of ours, and they'll bring something by us, and it's like, oh, what do you think of this? And it's like, well,
I wouldn't buy it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't like this. I don't like this. And a couple of times we've had to go and, like, I don't, kind of provide muscle, to be like, no, you're going to take this back. This is not good. This is why. And, some people are hesitant about doing that. And, especially if they say they have a return policy, because that's the other thing is actually, if a guy said that he's going to take it back, he should take it back. And because I had that happen to me, I bought an SS Panzer Beret, and besides it not being real, and technically the beret itself was real and the crash part was real, but the insignia was no good. And so not only was I out this thing that was fake, but I had fire saled a lot of my own stuff to be able to raise the money to get this. So I was probably out, twice the value, but I thought, okay, well, this is my one shot at getting one of these. And the guys, he's like, his original thing was, no, it's original. I'll take it back. And then I'm like, yeah, this isn't good. This is why. He's like, no, it's original. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
He's like, well, yes, it is. And I said, no, it's not. And after going back and forth, and back and forth and back and forth, I finally convinced him, to a little heavy-handedly to take it back.
That is the problem. I was going to say this is a good segue. The SOS is coming up next month. I've been going for the last, with the exception of the last two. I've been there for about the last 10 years as a member, and I've enjoyed it every time, right? But I think the SOS is a great display of, you must know what you're buying, because there is a lot of rubbish at the show, sadly to say. I remember one of my first years, I went there, not with a lot of money, but my idea was to walk around and buy one of the normal Africa Corps bands, right?
Oh, sure.
And I walked around for the first day, and it was just bad one after bad one after bad one, and everyone said it was real. Everyone said it was great, and eventually found a real one. But some of the stuff that you saw in some of those cases, it bordered on, some of it was just your usual fakes. You had a fake assault badge, you had a fake armband, but then other cases had, like Stalingrad shields in it. They had things that don't even exist, or
Right.
it's just a thing. And these guys, these guys are just like, that's come out of a 40-year collection. This is one of four I know. Yes, that's why it's $250,000. So yeah, like what's your guys' view on the SOS and on the shows?
We okay, when we set up, we try and make sure that every item that we bring is original. And so when somebody walks by our table, if we've got something fake on it, we don't know about it, and point it out to us and we'll take it off. But if somebody comes through, this year when we were there, a guy came by and he's looking at our table, and he didn't buy anything from us, but he said, "Thank you. You guys have all original stuff." And it was like, it felt good. But like you said, if you're going to buy something from somebody and you can spot that those Stalingrad shields or that Luftwaffe Sea Rescue badge, and it's like, what's the chance of the piece that you're interested in being real?
Right. And it's like, and there's no distinction. It's not like they have all the questionable pieces in one case.
No,
It's all
throughout,
intermixed. Yeah. So it's like, and most of the time, like we really try to price all our stuff, but I always hate going up to the table where nothing is priced. Stuff is mixed in, good, bad, indifferent. And I get some of the people are like flea market guys, and okay,
there's a lot
fine.
of flea market guys there. I've found that there has become more sort of flea market sort of sellers there, and you go up to the table and you say, how much is this? Let's just say it was a rank chevron, and they almost have to just pluck a number out of their head. It's like $100, and it's like, well, where'd you get that? How'd you come up with that? I don't think that's really right.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's always difficult. It's like, are they sizing me up? Are they, looking at my shoes, seeing how much I spent on my shoes, and to try to gauge it out is what the price point should be, or
no,
maybe if I wince too much, they'll readjust their pricing. But yeah, we always do try to keep all of our stuff on our tables original, because it's just confusing as a buyer when you're not sure. One, even at the shows, because there's so many tables packed into such a space, you're not even sure whose stuff is whose. Sometimes the tables don't have those, delineation marks, as to who you're buying it from. And is this real? Is this fake? Is this supposed to be fake? Is this, so we try to avoid those questions, just have everything be real.
It's hard because there's a core group of good dealers, of good people who've been known for a long time. You guys, the Ruptured Duck, there's the people who have online stores who set up, right? But then there's a core group of questionable dealers who show up every time, without saying names. Everyone usually knows who they are, and people, sort of the society in general, seems to just turn a blind eye and just say, like, well, they're there. They're free to be there. They have the freedom to be there. I guess it's that sort of mantra, and I think that's a real detractor. Like I've spoken to it's usually younger people, but not specific to them, who've gone to said dealers, and they've bought something quite expensive, and they've sold them the big story, and then that they've sort of been like, oh, I'm never going to an SOS again. I'm never going to a Militaria show again. I saved up all year and I got burned for $1,500, and like, stuff this hobby is shit. I'm out. So it's sad, because it does damage.
No, definitely. And we see that a lot, because a lot of times we're the ones that they'll bring the thing to, all excited. And, generally I won't venture an opinion on somebody's thing unless they ask me.
Yeah, of course.
That's
like,
smart. What do you think of this? I'm not going to say, oh, you dummy, you bought that, it's fake. But if they ask me, I'm going to tell them what I really think, and I'll show them why, and I'll go to the reference library and point out what's wrong, or but like you said, it takes the wind completely out of those young collectors' sails, and now you've just lost not only the sale of the day. You've lost future sales from this kid.
That's it.
Who's now going to go invest in Pokemon cards or something.
Exactly. I guess a question now that how do you guys see, if you're looking through the spyglass, how do you see the future of the hobby? Do you think it's bright? Do you think the hobby is going into rocky waters? Do you think we're going to go through a transition phase? Like how do you guys see if we're looking, let's say, 25 years down the track?
I don't know that we can look that far. But even just on the horizon, I mean, there's an interesting political climate now. Everything's really polarized. And, especially with the World War II German stuff, I've been reading a lot how Canada is trying to pass a law essentially banning it, and how that could impact the hobby. And then there's the people, because it's not, you can't really do a display of all your World War II German stuff. So it's, how is that being regaled? And I think the Show of Shows has done an excellent job of kind of blending keeping the historical aspect of things like that with their kind of common sense rules. Okay, don't wear a frickin' German uniform and walk around the aisles. Don't have German flags flying. Don't have the little mannequin saluting, standing on your table. It's like, yeah, that all makes sense. So I think that's the part that kind of scares me more so is how the German side of it is perceived, and collectors are perceived than kind of the rest of the hobby. I mean, and you talk about the graying of the hobby, and it certainly is. I mean, there's if you go to the show, but there are younger kids, and
there are,
which is always encouraging to see. We actually get a lot of them in our shop. There's probably, I would say, 24 regular kids and families. We have a couple families that come in and they shop together, and the one kid collects this and the other kid collects this, and that's great to see. So I think there is some strength in the hobby. Everybody always talked about the Civil War, the graying of the Civil War hobby of collecting and things. And essentially the Civil War prices are still remaining strong. It's a maybe the group has gotten a little smaller, and these collections have gotten out to the public, but they get sucked back up into collectors' hands.
It's incredibly a popular area, and the Civil War stuff amazes me. I think for once, this would be quite rare for me to say, but I think the prices are justified with Civil War stuff. There's not a mountain of items. So and there's quite a small group, so I think Civil War collecting is great, but you are right. Anytime anything gets sold, it's boom, instantly back in. It never sort of lingers, does it?
And I think we'll see that with some of the German collections too, because now we're actually getting to the point where some of these earlier collectors are passing, or they're going into assisted living, and they're like, I'm 85 years old. It's time for me to sell this stuff, and it's like, okay. But those collections are being sucked up. 300 daggers hit the market, they're gone.
They're gone. That is right.
It's just, so that it's interesting to see. But I do think the hobby is strong. There's a lot of interest at the local levels with shows now. I mean, obviously, COVID put its stomp on everything for a while, but shows have been really popular locally. There's even a few more shows that have popped up. And along with the national and regional shows, like the Show of Shows in Louisville, and there's another Chicago show happening. The St. Paul show is happening. So those around us. Those are great bigger shows. We have one in Wisconsin called the Badger Military Show that actually happens twice in the summer.
Do you guys do the Max show, or is it just?
Yeah, we've done it before, but it's about a 14-hour drive for us. And that's a little too much. Yeah,
I have heard mixed reviews of the Max show over the last couple of years. People saying that if there is a big show to go to during the year, the SOS one is sort of the defining one, while the Max one seems to be more of a dealer show. More things are more sold between dealers instead of to the public.
Yeah, and I think the Max show, if I had to categorize it, I would say it's more because there's less tables, so guys bring more of their higher ended things.
Yeah.
And it's majority German, followed by high-ended US and British and Commonwealth orders and things like that, where you're going to see the, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $10,000, $50,000 items.
That makes sense. I do have a question. This is just going back to this is going back to the knowledge library, which I still think is brilliant. So we all get things wrong sometimes. We're not perfect. Even the most experienced scholar on this subject will get things wrong. It's just there's so much. So explain a time where, apologies, that's my alarm. Explain a time where things haven't gone to plan, and like how you guys deal with making a call on something that you might have thought was bad, but it turns out to be real. Like, let's talk about how you guys go about sort of debunking things, and sort of where you've made the wrong calls and how you've dealt with it. So sort of that sort of, because everyone makes those mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it happens, especially like if we're buying collections, and again, there might be some mixed things in there. This is brilliant. We bought a large, mostly SS and other German collection out of Minnesota, from a collector who had passed, and just a lot of stuff in there: Algemine uniforms, camouflage uniforms, collar tabs, gold party badges. It was
all the big dollar items, all the great items.
It was a fantastic collection, really awesome. In there was there was like a Model 16 World War I style helmet with fake SS decals on it, and I'd put that onto our reproduction pile, and then Mark was working the next day, and he looked at it, and he's like, did you see the RZM marking in there? And I said, no. And sure enough, yeah, this was actually an original SS RZM style helmet, that Jerry was going to sell for like $75.
Remind me to come around to the store more on those days.
Yeah, well, yeah, and and I mean, we both do it actually, because we don't have time to research everything right out of the gate, and we try to, but sometimes things happen, and conversely, we've bought in things that we thought were real, either in part of a collection or, like we bought a collection of helmets and it's a bunch of stuff. Well, there was an SS helmet that we had thought was real, and we bought it as if it was real. And then in researching it and kind of vetting it, because I do vet a lot of stuff on the various forums, just to try to get the lay of the land on things. It turned out to be, one of the round bottom fakes. Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, we still have that, because we're not going to, shuffle it down the road or, throw it into an auction or, Manions used to be like the great dumping ground of
the big graveyard of every dealer's sort of
right. It always kind of right. It always kind of frightened us. Like if we go to buy a collection and there'd be a bunch of little Manions bags, it's like
you'd be like, I've seen this before 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. So you just need to, look a little closer with some of the stuff. Do you think of anything else?
Well, one of the collections we bought, there was a bunch of badges in there and visor hats and stuff. And in the badges, there was some that, we only had so long to look at things. And it was like, there was some that I believed were real and some that I believed were fake. And then after researching it, some of the ones I thought were real were fake, and some of the fake ones were real, and it kind of balanced out. There was another collection we bought. It was an estate, and this guy, he had bought this SS General's, Allgemeinen SS General's visor hat, and he bought it, and he flew to Germany to pick it up. And, he was bragging about it. No, he wouldn't say how much he paid for it, but
that's never good.
Yeah, it was fake.
And those ones are the hard ones. You're just like, well, you paid for the plane ticket, you went over there, sleep deprived, took time off work, and they say I bought it from the family. Well,
sure,
maybe it wasn't the family who had it in 1945. Well,
even some of those Germans. I mean, I forget what it was, a Rudel or one of the famous Luftwaffe aces was like notorious for selling his Knight's Cross over and over and
And over and
over.
over. That's right. I remember that story. I think it was Riddell as well. He just had them made up so he could say, oh, I need another 10,000 US dollars. Well, look, I'll give you this as collateral sort of
Right.
thing. It's very interesting. I guess this is a good way to get on to the last question that I have. Look, we find this stuff very enjoyable to talk about. It's it's your bread and butter, something you can talk about all day. It's something you can talk about very easily. But people who haven't aren't really in the hobby, sometimes find it quite challenging to talk about this stuff and understand it. I make the analogy that if you are a sports card collector, almost anyone can be like, I understand this person likes sports, that's why he collects it. If you say I collect Third Reich badges or stuff like that, the first inkling most people is like, oh, are you a Nazi? Are you a neo-Nazi? What's your problem? It's something, and I think it's from a lack of education that most people sort of connect those dots first because it's the first thing their brains go to. But is it hard, from your guys' perspective as well? Is it hard to mainstream the hobby, make it sort of palatable for people who aren't in it?
Well, actually, I usually start out was that I'm a dealer and this
Mm,
is what I deal in.
mm.
And then if it comes along, what do you collect? Well, then I'll tell them what I collect. But it's always, I'm a dealer first, and which isn't really true. 'Cause I'm
Yeah,
a
we're
collector.
mainly
The collectors,
collectors.
that's it. No one's ever a dealer.
We're
That's
just
the second part of it.
right. We're actually collectors who can't afford to be collectors, so we
That's
have
it.
to be dealers. But it's interesting because and this is a conscious choice on my part, and I know some people argue with it, but I try to stay away from the words Third Reich and Nazi as much as I can.
Mm,
I use World War II German.
that's it.
Uh, and because that almost takes the wind out of their sails. And we actually had this discussion when we were moving into our new building, because it's a very high profile building. We've got a lot of front glass windows, and we were kind of talking about, okay, how are we going to put the German stuff? And we actually have a room that's completely German. But what we were able to do is we've got Imperial German, we've got Third Reich German, and we've got like the East-West, kind of post-war German thing going on. So it's not the Nazi room, it's the
The
German
German
room.
room. Yeah, that's very
And
important.
and we try to put a little context with it. Even in some of the groupings that we have, like we have US groupings that have some German items in them as bring back
Let's bring
pieces.
back pieces. Yeah.
And so we try to say, hey, these were the souvenirs. And we were able to kind of use some of the same verbiage that they put forth at the show of shows, where, these were collected by GIs, as to, to the victors go the spoils. And this is why the guys took this stuff. And this is why it's still kind of interesting today. We're not, just because you collect stamps doesn't make you a postman.
No, it doesn't. No, that's very
So
important. And I think it's
it's
very important not to cut out, like there's been this very big push to almost, like cut out parts of history. You cut
oh yeah.
out sort of colonialism, cut out the Third Reich, which I think is incredibly dangerous. I made the point. I was a few years ago. I was in Hungary, and I went to their National War Museum, and it's quite funny. It's in this long sort of imperial hall, and it talks about like the imperial era, the Austro-Hungarian era, and then there's about 3 feet that says nothing really happened during World War II, but Budapest got a bit banged up, and then it just goes straight to the Soviet era. So even in their national museum, they're just like, well, we really don't remember what happened for 4 years, but it probably
Right.
wasn't
Yeah.
good.
Kind of like, yeah, the Japanese,
The Japanese one,
it's kind of a culture. They don't
yeah,
kind of acknowledge that, oh yeah, that period something happened there.
something
But
happened. Yeah. But I think I'm totally with you in that view, that I think it's very dangerous to be like, it's like you should not be able to buy and sell this stuff. This stuff should be destroyed. This stuff, I think that is incredibly wrong, incredibly dangerous. It serves if somebody looked back and said, look, your grandfather flew B-52s, he picked this up in Germany, and then you have people say, well, that he shouldn't have picked that stuff up. That stuff's disgusting. You say like, well, that's not how you need to think about it. This guy, after flying X amount of missions, was standing at Ramstein Air Base and decided to cut a patch of a uniform that he found on the
Mhm.
floor, or pick up a Luger or something like that. It's a part of the whole story. It's all about the story. That's it. Like even the
Right. Well,
smallest item can have a story.
and it's interesting because like I think as collectors, we study that period in history more so than anyone, even in schools. They don't touch on the Holocaust and all the stuff that happened, and how the Germans did take over kind of just a step at a time. It wasn't a massive coup. It was a little bit here and a little bit there, and how it integrated the entire lifestyle into this way of thinking, and how it became part of this greater machine. And once you start seeing these inner workings, how the Germans took over the labor unions, and they took over the schools, and they had their own books. And you can really see how this happened. And I think being able to see how this happened, like as collectors, well, people kind of look at us like, oh, are you a Nazi? It's like, no, we hate the Nazis because we know exactly what they did.
Exactly. It's like we beat them, we spent 4 years beating them. So come on, like you can take some of their stuff at the end, it's when you win.
Right. I mean, I'm sorry, they just had really cool stuff. Like I make the analogy, like German belt buckles. There are 27 different types of belt buckles without even getting into the variants. Now, the American Army, we had two.
Yeah.
We had a closed buckle and an open buckle. That was it.
That's it. And you wonder why these guys ran out of raw materials at the end, because they've been spending building thousands of different belts and badges and hats.
The postman had a dagger. It's like this stuff was almost like made to be collected.
It is. It's the ultimate field where even if you focused in one area, there's 40 makers of something. There's 6 types. I think it's an absolute honey hole of the hobby, and I think that's what attracts so many people. Mark, Jerry, your time has been immensely valuable, and I think this has been a great insight into not only how a shop has to run that deals with Militaria, because a lot of people are now online as well, but also how collectors sort of end up being dealers, and how you're the same guys. People say dealers are different. You're not. You're just the same guys, except you sell the stuff as well as holding on to it. So I want to thank you for your time. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I think everyone who listened has enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. We really appreciate all you do for the hobby, and while you can't keep everybody honest, you do your part.
I just do my part to annoy people. That's
you stick it out there a lot more than most people are willing to do.
Oh, that's it. That's it.
We appreciate that. I mean, it's always funny. Like when we were first collecting, and we'd get a piece, and we want to ask a friend of ours. The first question would be, "Well, who had it?"
That's who had it. That's it.
Well, who had it? Why does that matter if it's real or not? That's not the question you ask.
This day and age, it matters more than you guys know. Trust me. Where it came from. Yeah.
I suppose.
Exactly right. And that's we've always taken great. That was one of the first things we said. We're going to guarantee every single thing we sell, because 1, if it's fake, I don't want to sell it. 2, if it's a good piece, I can sell it again just as easily.
That's it. You can complete the cycle. But guys, thank you so much for your time. Cheers.
Well, thank you very much for talking with us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, overall, I think that went well.
I do too.
He's a nice guy. Always on the side of truth and justice. So that's always nice to deal with. It's good to talk to like-minded people. So we'll have to see what he comes up with. He does an interesting job banging things together. So, all right. Until next time, I'm Jerry.
And I'm Mark.
And we are the Military Collectibles Shop.